John, I mean, this Neymar development, 220 million for a player, and that's the way it's been going. The Pogba deal, for example, the Lukaku deal. It is going to take certain clubs, Arsenal and Liverpool, out of the ball game, isn't it?
Yeah.
And Bayern Munich, who are a great club. The Italian clubs, they can't go anywhere near that kind of money. And just to illustrate how it knocks on, PSG pay Barcelona 220 million. Barcelona immediately go out and look to buy Coutinho, who is a good player, but he's not a 100 million player. And then Barcelona yesterday paid 36 million for Paulinho, who is a Brazilian who is at Spurs. He's useless. So the inflationary effect of the Neymar deal can't be overestimated.
Well, but this is not new, I mean.
But no, but it's reached new dimensions now where you're taking...
No, but it always reached new dimensions. Before Abramovich came into Chelsea, they were nothing.
Yeah.
Before the owners came into Manchester City, they were nothing.
Yeah.
It's the survival of the fittest. It always has been. When Manchester United were on top, they could buy all the best players. It could nick players, get players. If it was Manchester United was in it, because the money talks all the time. Now the fact is, times have changed again. As Paris Saint-Germain and one or two other clubs are doing it. There's nothing new about it, Eamon. There's no way you can control it. It's happened in Chelsea's case, happened in Manchester City's case, happened in Manchester United's case. Liverpool, when they were on top, were the team who could buy players because they had more money than anybody else. That's the way it is. It's always going to be like that.
I don't think the gaps were anything like they are now. For example, I don't think there's ever been a time, and Didi's just mentioned it there, when he could envisage in 2 years Bayern Munich won't be able to compete for top players.
Yeah,
but that's never happened before.
Well, not to Bayern Munich it hasn't, because they were one of the big clubs can do it. But times, that's what I'm saying, is the time changed. I mean, if you got the big owners coming, Paris Saint-Germain 10 years ago couldn't afford to do it. Manchester City 12 years ago couldn't afford to do it. Manchester United at one stage couldn't afford to do it. So it's whoever has the money. It's the survival of the fittest all the time.
So you don't see any change?
No change. How's it going to change?
Okay, Liam, I say there's been a dramatic change. It's huge, because when you're dealing with PSG, you're dealing with the Qatari ruling family, and the government is buying Neymar effectively. That's a big change, surely.
Yeah, what I would say to you, it has happened, Bayern Munich. It happened in my career when Italy became the place for players to go, and Bayern Munich couldn't compete with what the Italians were paying, and consequently they lost the likes of Klinsmann to Inter Milan, Matthäus to Inter Milan, and Rummenigge before that to Inter Milan. So it can have an effect, and to a large degree I agree with John. But this Neymar transfer, it's almost doubled, if not more, and what was the top transfer previous to that, Eamon.
Yeah.
And because of that, all players have been, as you say, massively inflated. You know, you're talking about full-backs going for 55 million, goalkeepers going for 40 million. It really has had a knock-on effect, especially what's happening in England, because all the teams know that there is a lot of money because of the Premier League in England, and I don't think it's going to stop. Mbappe might very well be the lad. Maybe not this year, but in a year or two, he might beat Neymar's transfer.
The principle's the same.
Well, PSG are in for him at the moment. He might be going there. Just to give an example to all of you, Manchester United bought Lindelof, a centre-half from Benfica, for 31 million. He's a Swede. He wasn't even on the bench at the weekend.
And now, I mean, you probably get a squad player. That's the way it's going, you know.
Yeah. But that's rampant inflation.
There was supposed to be financial fair play. You were supposed to only be able to spend a certain percentage of what you were earning from commercials, from sponsorship, from commercial deals, from the revenue you took in from gate receipts, from television. But as you can see, UEFA have abandoned that, you know. And what's going to happen? And it'll be down to probably 2 or 3 clubs to win the Champions League, if they get the selection right. There's been plenty of teams who've spent money, Eamon, and haven't succeeded.
Didi, you talked about regulation, and I think you're right. I think wage caps, transfer caps, there must be an attempt to tackle this, otherwise the game will spiral out of control.
Well, Rummenigge again, he came out this week and they went to the European Union, I think 7 or 8 years ago, and asked him to put some kind of cap or regulation in place, because I think he saw the development when it came to transfer fees and wages, and it's simply not sustainable anymore, because if you the teams, clubs like Portsmouth, Leeds, even Liverpool a few years ago, they were a week away from bankruptcy when Gillette and Hicks were doing business there when they were in charge of the football club. So I think what we see now, if people lose interest in their clubs, that it's simply the teams have to pay so much money in wages if they were to get relegated. I think even with the parachute payment, I think a lot of these teams will struggle to survive, and I don't think it's good for football. Can there be a regulation? I think you have to prove that football is different to any other business, because otherwise you can't put regulations in place. I don't see it at the moment.
And as a result of the Bosman ruling in the European Court of Justice, it was deemed that football was not a sport. It was in fact a business, and that allowed Bosman to go and work for whoever he wants. So that was the pivotal moment. The question is, I mean, John is shaking his head here and saying it's the same as it always was. It isn't, because there are fewer clubs able to play in the game that PSG are playing.
The principle is the same, Eamon. I'm not saying it's not different. It's different. There's more money being spent. The principle is the same. Manchester United did it when they have it. You're talking about going to the European Court, and football is a business. It is a great sport, but it's a business. Yeah. So there's no chance. How are they going to cap the wages? How are they going to do it? If you're in the EU, you're entitled to go where you want. Sorry, Creedy.
Johnny, just one thing. You know, I think where it is different. Obviously, if it's classed as any other business, it's supply and demand. I think what the big difference is. You mentioned Manchester City. You mentioned Chelsea. I think when Liverpool was successful, yes, they had the most money because they probably had the biggest gates, and they had probably got the biggest money or the most money of UEFA, because they were successful, because the winners would get more money of UEFA winning the Champions League or the European Cup than a semi-finalist or somebody who gets knocked out in the first round. I think 30, 40 years ago, teams and clubs grew organically. The money was in the game. What's happening now, there's money coming in from outside, which got nothing to do with revenue, because if the Qataris decide to pump £1 billion into Paris, which they do, if Sheikh Mansour pumps £1 billion or £2 billion into Manchester City, this is not money made out of the football club. This is outside money, which obviously takes the clubs who worked over the last years, or the last 20 or 30 years, who grew organically like a Bayern Munich. It will take them out of the equation of winning the Champions League. And I think this is the big difference, because if Manchester City decides to buy Messi tomorrow for £500 million, they do so. Yeah. And obviously, where does it leave Liverpool? Where does it leave an Everton? Where does it leave any other club in Germany? There's another player we've not even touched on in Dortmund, Dembele, who's probably, at the moment, for me, the best player, or best young player around. He's gone on strike about a week to 10 days ago. He's gone missing. He's not been at the football club. Barcelona apparently want to buy him. And it's a situation which is, I think it upsets the fan. I think the fan can't really relate to the transfer fees anymore. And if the gap gets bigger between teams, clubs, players and the fan, I think it's a very dangerous situation at the moment, because if the fan turns away from football and doesn't go to the stadium anymore, I don't think we haven't got much left.
Yeah, just let me ask Liam, John, before John comes back in. Liam, effectively, Arsenal are not in the top echelon now, in either in England or in Europe, because they don't deal in sums either for transfer fees or for wages. Isn't that true?
Absolutely. That's been always been the way. Even, Arsenal have had their moments. They had them in John's time in '71 when they won the double. but they weren't able to sustain that. They had the moments under George Graham, and they certainly had the moments under Arsene Wenger. But since the big money's come along, like the likes of Chelsea, when there was Arsenal competing with Manchester United, that had half a chance, and Wenger knew a lot of the good players in France that he could get at bargain prices before anybody else. But those days have gone now, and there's probably about 6 or 7 or 8 clubs who have all the money, and it's probably this season been narrowed down to 3 or 4. So nothing's changed for Arsenal. They've always been that kind of club, but they've also been the kind of club that wants to balance the books. And under the American owner, Stan Kroenke, that certainly is not going to change. He is not going to get into this madness. A bit like Rummenigge says, it just won't happen.
No, John, I don't think we've ever been at the point before where people could say, this is madness. People like Rummenigge and people like Didi.
I mean, when Gervais Francis was signed for
a million.
Go back to a million, it was outrageous. People going back 25, you go back a long, long time. When the first transfer fee was, Dennis Law say 50,000, it was outrageous. I agree with the principle of what the lads are talking about. That I don't agree with it. I don't think it's good for
it's
football.
Not a question of whether you agree or not. The question is...
It's a change in time.
Is it happening? You're saying it's not happening.
What's not happening?
That there's an inflationary spiral in transfer fees and wages.
Yes.
That is like nothing we've ever seen before. But you're saying we have seen it before.
We have seen it in different degrees.
John.
No, hang on, let me finish. Now, you've had your say.
Yeah.
There's always been the survival of the fittest. Teams that could afford it could do it. This is a different era. It's a different times. We're 50 years on where these multi-billionaires are coming into the game. I don't think it's good for the game. But you're not going to stop them. It's not good for the game. We're not
talking about stopping them at the moment. We're talking about, you're saying, against my argument, against Didi and against Liam, you're saying that it's always been like this. What I'm saying... The principle have always been like this. The amounts are different. The amounts are huge now. Okay.
It's very different, but the principle has always been the same.
All right.
The team that had the money spent the money, and they were the top teams.
Well, let me ask you a question then. When can you remember a club like PSG paying 220 million euros for a player, okay?
Yeah.
A sum that more than doubled the transfer record, and I don't think that ever happened before.
It didn't happen before. I'm not disagreeing with that. Of course it didn't happen before, but that's how the times have changed. The money wasn't there before to do it.
Hold on. And as a result of that, Barcelona have 220 million to go out and spend.
Yeah.
And now they go out and they pay 90 or 100 million for a Liverpool player, Coutinho, who isn't worth that. They also go and buy Paulinho, who's a Brazilian, for 36 million, who's probably not worth 36,000. So this vicious... Sorry, Liam, go ahead.
What to buy Dembele, who Didi's man, is that Dortmund, and the lad hasn't turned up for training.
Yeah.
These are the things that had probably 5 or 6 top players not playing the weekend in England because they don't want to stay at their clubs anymore. They want to leave. So they're under contract. Alexis Sanchez says he's injured at Arsenal.
Van Dijk.
Van Dijk says he's injured at Southampton. Diego Costa is still in Brazil, apparently, and hasn't come back and has been fined today or yesterday by Chelsea. It's creating a really, really bad atmosphere in the game amongst supporters.
Yes.
I think something really should be done about it. This financial fair play was supposed to come in, and UEFA were going to be adamant about the way things could happen, but I'm afraid it's all gone out the window. Platini's getting into trouble didn't help. Infantino leaving and going to FIFA, and you can see what he's like. Really, we don't. The game is without guidance at the moment. It's without regulation, and unless it's stopped, it's going to ruin it. It really is.
Didi?
Yeah, well, I agree with Liam. It's not healthy for the game. I think it's farcical, and I said this a long time ago, that the transfer window shouldn't be open when the major leagues start playing again. You've got a situation now where Liverpool got the biggest game tonight and next week against Hoffenheim, a very capable team, and arguably the best player is not playing because he's vying out for he wants to move. He could potentially play because I don't think he's cup tied even for Barcelona if he plays in the qualifiers. Qualifiers don't count. So potentially he could play and still go. But it shouldn't even be the case. That transfer window should be shut by the time the season starts, because Liverpool's season now, if they get knocked out of the Champions League in the next 10 days, if they don't win on the Saturday, potentially their season could be over before it started. And this is all down to probably that one transfer from Neymar going to Paris, because Barcelona want players. They want Dembele now. They want Coutinho. And you've got a pre-season for 6 weeks where you put your team together, and then a day before the season starts, somebody comes in and says, transfer request, I want to go to Barcelona, and upsets the whole thing. So I got some sympathy what Liam said about the manager. Maybe that should have been handled differently. Maybe they should have been aware what might happen. But end of the day, it shouldn't never go into the season, because it's simply a situation that should never happen. So I think the transfer window is the first thing they need to change.
Yeah, it goes on too long, John. Would you agree with that?
Oh no, definitely, I agree totally.
It should
with that.
stop when the season starts.
Definitely, yeah. There's no way the season should be gone in 2 or 3 weeks in the season, and the window's still open. It's a terrible position for managers and everybody concerned with the game.
Now,